Meantime, officials in North Korea threatening to reduce the United States to, quote, ashes and darkness and to sink Japan. That's according to state media there. It comes after the United Nations passed new sanctions against the country because of its latest nuclear test. Earlier this month, Kim Jong-un conducted the country's 6th nuclear test. Analysts say it was the most powerful test yet. The latest threat comes amid reports that North Korea may be preparing for yet another missile test. It also comes as Secretary of State Rex Tillerson meets with his counterparts from around the world in London to discuss North Korea. Let's get to Rich Edson. He's live for us at the State Department. Rich, the Secretary says he wants more action from China.
Trace, the Secretary acknowledged today that it's going to be very difficult on the United Nations Security Council to pass a full oil embargo against North Korea, and China really holds the key to that. The Secretary of State and U.S. allies were pushing for China to have that full oil embargo on the Security Council, though China and Russia watered down those latest sanctions. President Trump even remarked that the sanctions that the UN Security Council did pass were no big deal. Secretary Tillerson says he would like to see China, North Korea's major oil supplier, cut some of those shipments.
I am hopeful that China, as a great country, a world power, will decide on their own and will take it upon themselves to use that very powerful tool of oil supply to persuade North Korea to reconsider its current path towards weapons development, reconsider its approach to dialogue and negotiations in the future.
Secretary Tillerson says that while the UN security sanctions aren't all that the United States wanted, it still at least sends a unified message that most of the world and the international community are against North Korea in what it's doing in developing its missile and nuclear programs. Now, the U.S. and the State Department maintain that what it calls its pressure campaign against North Korea is working, that there are countries that are beginning to cut off more diplomatic ties, cut off some of their economic ties with North Korea, even as North Korea continues shooting off missiles and exploding nuclear weapons. But the administration and the State Department is saying, look, the beginning part of this to get the international community to move is happening. What we need to see in the future, and they say this will take time, is North Korea to change its behavior, Trace.
Yeah, and meantime, you've got Russia launching major military exercises in Europe.
The Zapad military exercises, Zapad meaning west, as these exercises are taking part in the western part of Russia and Belarus, very close to the border with NATO countries and American allies. The U.S. is watching these maneuvers very closely. There are concerns Russia may use this exercise to mass forces in Belarus and then threaten those nearby NATO allies. Russia says they're keeping the number of troops at less than 13,000. Now, if they had more than that, international observers could monitor in certain ways. But NATO and the United States say Russia has far more participating, like in the range of 100,000. The Pentagon says quote, the official estimates provided by Russia and Belarus do not correspond with media reporting. Now, the Kremlin claims that the West is, quote, whipping up hysteria on all this with the war games ongoing in the western part of Russia and Belarus, though U.S. and NATO allies would point to some of the concerns and some of Russia's behavior in the past, and that would be the seizure of Crimea, the invasion in Georgia, some of the other interventions that Russia's had over the last decade in Syria and in Ukraine. So there is some concern from the U.S. and allies, and certainly among the Baltic states as this is happening right in their backyard. Trace?
Bit of an honesty problem. Rich Edson live for us, the State Department. Rich, thank you.